Thought I'd do just fine for catching some smallmouth. I would be embarrassed if I were you, broke boy. I'm going to catch smallmouth. Why would I need such an expensive rod? Shut your face, peasant. I'm the rod god. You call yourself the rod god. Yeah, and I've earned that name by the amount of rods I've held. Long, short, wide, skinny. You couldn't compare. I'd probably pick a different name if I were you. No, I like the sound of it. Rod god. Rod god. I love rods.
Hey, all right, good morning. Welcome back to another Lone Angler podcast. I am Patrick. If you hear some karate going on in the background of this, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I live above a karate dojo. Yeah, I'm sitting up here, they're down there getting ready to kick some ass. That's the life I live. Hey, it's Tuesday morning. What happened to Monday? Usually I drop these episodes on Monday. Yeah, Sunday. The weekend just kind of got away from me. Matter of fact, Friday, I got into this habit or welcomed addition, maybe, of taking an afternoon nap. See, I finish work on Fridays at noon, usually home about 12:30-ish. Sometimes I stop at the gym if I feel like it on Fridays. This Friday was no different. I'm going to take my little afternoon nap. And I laid down at 2:30 and woke up at 7. Like 5 hours or 4.5 hours later. Then I thought, well, hell, shit, I'm going to be up all damn night. And decided I wasn't going to do that either. So I went to bed about 9:30, slept for another, 12 hours. Sometimes a guy just needs to sleep. Yeah. Anyway, that's a little bit about what happened with me. And as far as no episode drop on Monday, well, here it is. It's Tuesday morning. So there it is, man. That's what it is. I guess it's my show. I can do what I want. I know you guys kind of expect something, but hey, you'll at least get one a week, if not two, or occasionally. I know I've been a little bit off track on the two, but things have kind of slowed down. Matter of fact, what's slowed down is this weather, and we're going to get into that in a second. But first, I want to thank Panfish Pursuers P3 Plastics for supporting the Lone Angler. That's right. You guys should know about these guys. If you're a pan fisherman, whether you're in the ice belt or not, you should know about Panfish Pursuers. And all you got to do is go to p-3plastics.com. And you'll see exactly why I get excited to talk about it. And I know you're going to put a bunch of stuff in your shopping cart. And when you do, use the code SPUG, OGSPUG15. Get you 15% off your total order. There's pro packs even in there. Even I have a pro pack, and I'm not even a pro angler. We're going to get into that a little bit too. Also, thank you to Ridgetop Outdoors, located right here in Bemidji, Minnesota, right on the south end of town. There it is. You're coming up Highway 71 from, Brainerd or Minneapolis area or whatever. They're right there on the corner of, or the intersection of Highway 2 and 71 South. Swing on in there, fill up the truck, swing on over to Ridgetop Outdoors, pick up some bait, hooks, anything you need. They got it right there. All right. Well, I mentioned earlier the weather, and so far things have slowed down. Yesterday was a whopping 40 above, and I sat at the CAD computer all day, which was fine. I had fun. I did a little bit of SolidWorks. That's always a treat from doing the 2D CAD work. But 40 degrees out. And I never really once was like, man, I really wish I was outside ice fishing. No. It has been one of those winters for me where just the thought of going ice fishing just has not appealed to me. It happens. Maybe I needed a break. I know I've talked about it before, but I'm going to talk about it again because I was having a conversation earlier today with a good buddy of mine, and I kind of alluded to the fact that if Wow, those kids downstairs or down below me are loud, and I hope they whip somebody's ass someday. That's awesome. Anyway, I said if I have these feelings come, I don't know, this October, I might be doing a huge sale of a bunch of ice fishing gear, keeping just the bare minimum for myself, because I think things in my angling world are changing. And all I can think about is fly fishing and flow tube fishing, open water, warm water. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Who knows? I'm going to keep the door open, and I'll let you know if I decide to go that route, because then maybe you can pick up some really good gear for a pretty decent price. Not saying super cheap, but a pretty decent price. Anyway, with this 40-degree weather, it got me thinking about spring. Absolutely. I've been thinking about spring since the first snowflake fell, obviously. And usually springtime means a few different things to a few different people. For us ice fishermen, supposedly you start to get a little bummed out, but I think deep down inside, if everybody dug deep down inside, they'd be like, yes, I'm over 14 layers of clothes, frozen fingers, broken shit. It was fun. I battled through it. Chalk it up to a win for me, but bring on spring. And usually on like Facebook or something, people are already screaming about, I can't wait to get in the boat and all that kind of stuff. So I made a little list here. You're going to hear some paper crinkling. That's just my notes. I have to write notes because I'm elderly now. It's just what it is. Anyway, so as spring comes, we're going to hit that weird time of the winter where the ice is very questionable. Walleye season just closed here in northern Minnesota. Can't fish for those, pike, bass, none of that stuff. The only thing you can ice fish for now are perch and bluegills, crappies, catfish, bullheads. Oh, I don't know about catfish. Erase that I'll edit that out. Just erase that. I don't know much about catfish because we don't have them around here. Anyway, your panfish, rock bass, all them fun ones, right? And there's gonna come a time where it's just gonna be straight up way too sketchy because ice is melting really fast. And I've been in those situations where I've gone on the lake, laid ice, everything's great, awesome, go to leave and got to get wet to get to dry land, which also sucks because that water is still super cold. So this time of the year, it's time to start thinking about spring and getting things ready. Now, that doesn't mean just piling up the ice fishing gear in the corner and saying, I'll take care of it later. Now, I got a good tip from a really good friend of mine many years ago. When he packs away his ice fishing gear for the season, he actually packs everything away so that when that first ice hits and it's walkable, he's ready to go. He's not clamoring. He's not digging through boxes. He's not looking for anything. Everything is ready to go, and he pretty much uses a flip over for his storage. One of the tips I will give you for the tip ups or the flip overs, and maybe even try this with your pop ups too. Just go and buy a box of dryer sheets, and you don't have to throw the whole box in there. I throw, 6, 7, 8 dryer sheets in my flip overs, just down in the tub, and that's it. I've never had a mouse problem. Your pop-ups, I think when you fold them down, you'd spread those dryer sheets around, and then when you go to roll it up, they'll be in there. Maybe throw a few extra in the bag, seal it up, and you should be good to go. I haven't had any problems with mice chewing any holes in there. Apparently, dryer sheets drive them nuts. They don't like the smell of them. So packing up the ice gear in a way, or organizing your stuff in a way that it's ready to go for next ice, is really important. And I've done it before. This year, I've been pretty much ready to go since first ice because I've only been ice fishing 3 times. But if I would have had a normal winter where I would have gone a bunch of times, I'd be getting close to, all right, I don't necessarily strip all the line off my reels and put fresh on, because I'm usually fishing anywhere from, 16 feet to 30 feet. That's it. There's no reason to strip all the line off. I might check it in the fall, the first like 20 feet. And if it feels fine, I just leave it. You're just vertically fishing. It's not a big deal. And when it's put away, the sun's not beating down on it or anything like that. Unless you store them on a workbench with the sun shining in on them, then you might want to swap it out. But I don't see the reason to strip all this line off your reels and then try to retool in the fall. Just, pull off a few yards and call it a day. And then I use my panfish jigs, my ice fishing jigs. I pretty much take them with me all year because there's been times where I need a smaller presentation. Now, normally when I'm pan fishing in the open water, I'm using bigger stuff, but I always take some ice fishing jigs and some P3 plastics with me. That's for sure. Doing maintenance. Maintenance is always a good thing to do at the end of the year. I know that we have a lot of electric, the drill loggers, droggers as I call them, out there in the wild now, and there's still some maintenance that can be done on there. Now, there's a couple things you could do. You could take your blades off and store them nicely so they're not going to get banged around, and throw them in, or not throw them, but set them in I have a tendency to keep a lot of these, when you get the little boxes with lunch meat, I keep the boxes. I keep those little plastic boxes. They're great for storage, all kinds of shit. I have tons of them. But go ahead and put them in there. Some people now will spray them down with like a sprayable cooking oil, like a canola oil or something like that. I've heard of that. I think they would get pretty sticky over time. And that's not something that a little rubbing alcohol would, take care of. But if you get a lot of stuff from Amazon, or I believe you could probably go down to your local UPS store, or maybe even Office Depot, Office Max, something like that, some place that does a lot of shipping. Or if you I have a tendency to keep those little silica packets. Throw a couple of those in there in a little box with your blades, and they won't rust up. Plus, they'll be in this little container. They won't get banged around or anything like that. Some people just go ahead and leave their auger cover right on there. You could do that too, but again, I would probably take it off, dry them. You could rub a little oil on them, put the cover back on, throw a couple of silica packets in your, down on the top there of your auger protector. And that'll just help keep the moisture away. That's what those little silica packets do. It says do not eat. I think they're lying. They're probably really good, but I don't have the balls to try them. So with your augers, there's definitely something to do there. As far as the drill end of it goes, it's drill. You can pretty much just run them. Run them, or if you're like me, I have a really big badass DeWalt drill. The only thing that thing is used for is drilling ice. I'll take and do those cycle charges throughout the summer, just so I'm not ruining them, because those batteries aren't cheap. And then once you get all that done, it's always fun to sit down with a notebook and do your open water journal. Start your open water journal. My open water journal usually starts with a nice little fat list right on page 1 of new lakes that I'd like to fish. And along with new lakes comes new species, perhaps new techniques. It's always fun to sit down with a buddy. Like Crafty and I, we'll sit down and we'll talk about new bodies of water we want to fish, whether it's float tubing or taking the boat, whatever. It's always good to just sit down and stare at a map for a couple hours and just make a list. It doesn't have to be real long, even if it's just one lake. Make that promise to yourself to go on that adventure and try one lake. And being that we live in the ice fishing belt, that one lake, may be a good recon for a nice winter bite. One of those put her in your back pocket type things and don't tell anybody about it type waters. That's what I always kind of hope for. Oh my God, these karate kids downstairs, they are just, man, it is like a pit of vengeance down there. That or I got really thin floors. Probably both. So those are a few little things that I like to do in the spring. And then comes the open water tackle. So once you've got your open water list made, all right, now it's time for some tackle inventory for the open water season. Going through, checking for rusty hooks, all that good stuff, maybe reorganizing. One of my favorite things to do, and I do it every year, it seems it's time to go shopping for a new tackle storage system. That's right, fellas. Every year, new tackle bag. Why not? It's always fun. And then you get to sit down for hours and hours and throw on your favorite movie and let it play in the background as you're sorting through and reorganizing, because we're always on the quest for the perfect storage system. It never ends. I was looking the other day. This is weird. This is super weird. The other day in the mail, I got a Bass Pro Shops master catalog. I haven't seen one of those in years, and I think it's because I bought my fly tie-in vise. I think I ordered it from Cabela's, and I forgot that, Bass Pro bought Cabela's. So, boom, I get this master catalog, and right away, this wave of nostalgia just comes over me, because, man, I used to just freak out when I was a young kid, man, and when I'd get that thing, within a week, the pages were half torn because I was just feverishly going through it. Pen marks everywhere, circling, colors, sizes, baits that I wanted, making multiple lists because the first list was a giant list. I'd tally it all up, spend hours, do my perfect math. The math that I should have been doing in the classroom was done adding up my Bass Pro order several times to double check to make sure it was right, because I had to figure out how much yard work I had to do in order to buy this stuff. List number 1, come in $2,000-$3,000. I ain't got that kind of time or ambition. I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm not going to lie to you. No work ethic. I'm a 14-year-old male. Hardly any work ethic. Okay, we're going to revise the list. Let's go through this. Let's cherry pick the list. Yeah, I definitely don't need 5 colors of lizards. I hardly fish lizards. Let's just scratch lizards off the list. Sounds like a solid plan. So, and it would go through, crankbaits, your soft plastics, spinner baits. Spinner baits was always a hard one for me to get through because I always wanted all of them. Them and buzz baits. When I got my driver's license when I was 16 years old, my favorite thing to do was to tape or wire on a buzz bait at the base of my antenna on my car. You put about 100 miles on that buzz bait, and man, that blade would you breathe on it and that thing would just spin out of control. It'd break them in so nice. So nice. But I had a hard time going through that. And then I'd get to the tackle bag section. Always had to get a new one. And that was a hard one to scratch off the list. I would scratch it off the list a lot of the times because they were the most expensive. But man, that's what that Bass Pro Shops catalog did to me when I got it. But when I got this thing just the other day, I opened it up and I'm checking shit out. It's been, like I said, it's been 20 years since I seen a master catalog. I'm looking through, oh cool, there's no little table of all the different actions and lengths and weights and all that kind of stuff. It's pictures, brief description, not even a price. You just hit it with a QR code with your phone, and that kind of really bummed me out. It really kind of did. So I'll bring this Bass Pro Shop Master catalog to work and let the jackals at work feed on it for a little while. But yeah, that was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. The one good thing I noticed, though, it was fishing throughout pretty much the whole thing. I'd say a good 85%, because if I remember correctly, back when I was a kid, it was a little bit thicker, but you got about 60% of the way through and you were kind of into the boat part section. Then after that was clothes, camping gear. Here, it's pretty much the same, a lot less. There's hardly any clothes unless it's fishing related stuff. It's way towards the back. The camping gear is pretty much gone. A lot of boat ads and resort ads, though, front and back, flanking both sides of the juicy goodness that's in the middle. But it's always fun to look through and see all the new shit that's out there and stuff that I don't even really need anymore because, like I said, my quest, my sole purpose now is to just get into fly fishing and continue my journey with that, which there again, I have to do some spring maintenance. The line I got on here on my fly reels, I learned is way subpar, and my casting will become a whole lot better if I put some real fly line on there. When I say real, I'm talking about some real good shit. And I've double, triple checked this, and a lot of people say that it makes a big difference. I bought some cheapo $10 Green Mountain fly line or some shit like that. I have no idea what it is, but it's after doing quite a bit of reading and watching some reputable YouTube fly fishing gentlemen, that's something that's going to be done here this spring. I do have to do a little bit of a rod repair on one rod, and might upgrade to a different reel. Not 100% sure on that. The only reason for the upgrade on the reel would probably be because most fly reels, you can get a spare spool for them. And that would allow me to quickly, I'm not going to say quickly because I'm not advanced at fly casting, but it would allow me to just change spools if I wanted to go from a floating line to a sinking line, which I kind of plan on doing halfway through the summer. I still got a lot of mechanics to do and to go with, but so I still have my work to cut out for me. I still got the bench full of stuff and a bench full of hopes and dreams and different patterns. I kind of messed around this winter making ice fishing jigs, which I hardly didn't use, but hey, they're not going to go to waste. Guaranteed ice next year. Maybe I'll dip them then. I'll probably use a bunch of them this summer. That's for sure. But speaking of, we're going to slide into a little segment. I'm just going to call this one, Let's Get Sucker Punched with Tyler Winter. Tyler is going to come on here and he's going to talk a little bit about spring fishing. And if you listen to my podcast with Tyler about rough fish, you'll know who I'm talking about. He's a rough fish enthusiast. He is just an awesome dude. And I gave him a call because sucker fishing is really fun. It's one of the first fish you can catch on open water rod and reel, and they put up a heck of a fight. So enjoy this little episode or this little segment with Tyler Winter, yet to be named, but I'm just going to call this one, Let's Just Get Sucker Punched. Yeah, all right. Now we have Tyler Winter coming in. I did a podcast with Tyler a while back. It was awesome. We talked about rough fish and that whole deal, but I have spring on my brain already. I've hopefully fingers crossed, this was my last 35 below zero morning. Please let it be. I'm so over it, but that just fuels that fire for spring. And so with me right now on the line is Tyler. Tyler, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm also tired of this cold weather, and I was just cleaning reels because I'm getting ready for spring too. It's just a matter of time.
I would imagine that you're ready for spring once fall hits.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. You can keep worms in your fridge over the winter. And I will do that so that I am ready in the spring, because the bait shops don't always have worms right away.
Right.
They are caught up on the fishing opener or something.
Right. Which fishing opener? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, as soon as the ice goes off. That's the opener in my world. That's the definition of the opener, is when you have open water. So one of my favorite things to do is to go and find the first patch of open water on a lake where a stream comes in,
mm-hmm.
and I will be catching fish in that open water while people are still ice fishing on the lake.
Fantastic. Now, the purpose of this little segment is, one of my hidden agendas, I'll just put it this way, is in the spring, it is pretty well known and it's rooted in deep tradition to enjoy a little bit of that sucker run, because the days are starting to get warm and they're starting to run. and it's quite fascinating. I've observed rivers and creeks just full of them, and I could just stare at it for hours. But there's an opportunity to get the rod bent there. And instead of waiting for the beloved walleye for you to be able to catch one legally, I think there's a missed opportunity there. So, Tyler, spring, let's just paint a picture real quick. Spring is upon us.
Mm-hmm.
When do we start looking for opportunities to catch suckers on rod and reel?
Literally, as soon as you have the creeks open up.
Really?
So I take pictures every year of fish like that I've got a picture of. I caught in open water, but I'll like lay them in a little bit of snow in the shade to take a quick picture or to keep them fresh. Especially the white suckers, they spend the winter in lakes and a lot of the summer too, but they come into these creeks right away in the spring, and they're actually a really cold water fish. You find them in trout streams a lot.
Well, and that makes sense because in I've seen it out here on Lake Bemidji before, when in the heat of the summer, when the water is like, when muskie fishermen are like, stop muskie fishing because the surface temps are too hot. I'll see rather large white suckers floating dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of call that, you don't see a lot of them, but you'll see 2 or 3 of them floating around out there.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me to that they're a cold water fish.
Yeah, I've sampled them out of the bottom of Boundary Waters lakes in the middle of summer, like off the bottom in 50 feet of water, like below the thermocline. You also see them in trout streams, but you actually don't see white suckers in big rivers very much. So like on the Mississippi where I live and fish, I have no idea how many red horse we caught this summer, and we caught 1 white sucker out of the Mississippi. It was lost. But those white suckers will bite in cold water, and they will stage right at the mouth of that creek as soon as ice comes off. So like that's a good bite right there. Usually fish go upstream to spawn. So if you have a stream that goes into a lake and out of a lake, I always fish where the stream comes in.
Okay.
And the other thing too is the lake takes longer to warm up. So the water coming into the creek will start first. And then the water temp really drives this. So I'll fish on the upstream side of the creek at first until those fish like move on. And then I'll go downstream after the lake is putting out warm water and then catch those fish when they're at peak.
Okay. So if you were to take a wild guess at some sort of water temperature, you're probably looking at that 50-degree mark.
Yeah, you can catch fish like lower than that. The 40, 45, you'll get a few and you'll get more of those white suckers.
Okay.
At, over 45, you should get into good fishing. And at 50 degrees, I stop going home. I just fish all the time.
Okay. I'm just sitting here looking at a lake map of Lake Bemidji, and I'm already planning out like maybe I should fish the channel between Lake Irvin and Lake Bemidji for white suckers.
Yeah.
This spring. And as far as water temperature goes, I'm thinking about getting one of those just a little fly fishermen have them for sampling creeks and stuff. I think that'd be a great addition to the flow tube, but that could be a great addition in the spring too.
Oh, yeah. I will, like, I'll scout out and, like, take a thermometer. And, I know that when I see that 45 to 50 degree temperature that, like, I should go get the rods. And I'll, before that, maybe clean your garage, make maple syrup, get some of those chores out of the way.
Right.
So that you can clear your schedule once the fishing gets good. And then, then once fish move out of the lakes or out of deep water into the rivers, then they're going upstream, usually as far as they can. So then once you've, the lakes all iced off, the streams are running 50 to 60 degrees, then you want to look upstream. Maybe there's a dam upstream. It's probably a good place to be, somewhere close to that dam.
And when you say dam, it doesn't necessarily mean a man-made dam. Could be a beaver dam.
Could be a beaver dam. Could be anything that slows fish down. But I mean, that they might swim 10, 15 miles, upstream. If they've got the distance. Usually, I find a good gravel bar down below a dam is usually a good place to look.
Okay.
And if you have fish going upstream, here's a hot tip: inside bends.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right, because fish are lazy, and so they always take the shortest route up. So I always like to fish on the inside bend, and then cast out deep enough that you can't see the bottom anymore, because they're gonna cut that corner, but they also have to keep in mind that all of the eagles and herons and anglers are looking for them.
What a life to live.
Yeah, it's not easy. You can tell a good sucker run is happening when you see 3, 4, 5 bald eagles by a creek. You're like, that's
right. Okay, so the water temp hits that 45 to 50 degrees. You want to try this sucker fishing out. Set us up with a little bit of equipment to get us started.
I would recommend take your finest walleye Lindy rigging rod, just as it is, as you have it rigged up, and take that sucker fishing.
Perfect. I almost cut you off to say, now let's not get freaky because I have a tendency to do that.
Oh yeah,
specialized equipment. But for the average person who wants to do it for the first time, that's a great tip. Just your average walleye setup.
Honestly, one of my favorite rods is built on a walleye Lindy rigging extra fast blank from St. Croix.
Okay.
7.5. It's a 7.5 foot, extra fast Lindy rigging rod, and it works just perfectly for detecting those light bites, and it makes great sport for fish in the creek. So,
okay, let's talk about the rod real quick. You said 7.5 foot. Do you prefer that longer rod? Because in my head, I'm picturing somebody, traveling through, finding a creek or a river, and it kind of being a not so cast friendly. But is it easier to get that presentation, which we'll get into in a minute here, out there with just the flick of a wrist with a longer rod, or do you prefer that longer rod for bite detection? Because let's be honest, suckers, it's not a smash type hit.
No, it's not. I just tend to use longer rods in general. I also don't usually have to go, too much into, I'm usually not fishing in a willow thicket.
Right.
Because there isn't usually a lot of competition, so
it is a lonely life.
You don't have to escape the crowds, which is one of the benefits. Is that sometimes I get people away from my fishing spots by just telling them that suckers are biting. So that's a nice benefit. But yeah, I'm partial to that, and sometimes if you have if you've got the right bank, right inside corner with a steep drop off or something like that, there are times you don't cast at all. Those fish will come right by the bank, as long as you're not standing there looking like a heron. They'll come right under you. So you can just, put your fork stick there and drop it right over the edge, and then sit back from the edge and, watch the rod tip. But I like longer rods. Also, when you keep your rod in a fork stick, a longer rod keeps more of your line out of the water.
Yes. Yep.
But, anything from 6 to 8.5 feet, it's going to work.
Right. I think a key takeaway would be sensitivity. Something with a good flexible tip, but not too far down into the rod blank. Just for that bite detection. Have you tried fishing them with floats I mean, you could, I suppose, but usually you're in a current type situation.
Yeah. Yep. No, I just simple, I like a slip sinker rig. Um, and, uh, part of to the, rod, I like a carbon fiber rod because I can feel the bottom when I cast out. And you might find that, if fish are feeling kind of lazy, they'll be staging on sandbars or something like that. And so you can feel tap, 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 and then you feel the thud of the sandbar. And you're like, even though you can't see exactly what's going on, you're like, that's that slack water, the edge of that slack water eddy where the fish are concentrated, while they are resting or staging. Or you find fish are, biting on the gravel. So you want to have that, stop your bait where you have that tick, 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 don't let it bounce any further if that's where you're getting bites. But, sometimes I'll fish the same spots, close to my house over the course of several days, and you get like a picture. If you pay attention to where you're actually casting and where you're getting bites, you'll get a picture of where those fish are using in that creek. And that really can cut down on the time in between bites because they may not venture too far from that path as they're going upstream.
Okay. All right. Would it be safe to assume that, these paths in the streams are pretty consistent, almost like the duck flyway systems? I mean, it does change around, but we've got a pretty good general idea of where these ducks are coming from, whether it be the Arctic Circle or Northern Canada or whatever. They usually follow the same routes. Would that hold true for suckers in the spring?
Oh yeah. Yep. For sure. You get those. I mean, I've got little pockets on a corner or something like that, produce fish every year. And it's just a matter of like getting your bait in between the, overhanging branches and the tree that's stuck in the river. And you're like, but if I can get in between there, without snagging, there are fish back there every year,
Right. Okay. So we've got the rod, spinning reel, 2,500 size, maybe, your typical walleye setup. Let's talk about line. We'll just go line, then your hook bait setup, but we'll start with line.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer in braid.
Okay.
That's not, that can be controversial. And I know there are downsides if you're fishing on a lot of rocks, but for me, that sensitivity is key. And the smaller diameter means you can get away with less weight as well. So that's, you have to watch for abrasion, but I like braid. You don't need heavy duty stuff, but just because it's so thin, I put all my 15-pound braid on all my reels because it has a 4-pound diameter. So
okay. All right. And then are you doing a fluorocarbon leader or braid direct right to the hook?
I do a fluorocarbon leader because I like the sliding sinker rig. So I do a swivel and a fluoro leader, 8 to 12 pound, depending on what you think you might get into.
Okay. And I think it's important that we say fluorocarbon because fluorocarbon sinks. You don't want this, what we mentioned earlier, this quote unquote Lindy rig. You don't want your bait floating off the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm. And fluoros also is a nice stiffness and is also abrasion resistant.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems to work really well. So yeah, maybe a 12 to 18 inch leader, and I always top it up with a number 8 circle hook.
Number 8 circle hooks are important too.
They work really well. You feel that tap, and sometimes you lift up and the fish isn't there, and you just stop. You don't yank it 6 feet, and you can just stop. And sometimes they just come back and you get them on the second try, and sometimes they just hook themselves and you just pick the rod up.
Yeah, that's something that I had to learn using circle hooks because I started using circle hooks bullhead fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Bullheads, when you see that bite, there's a 99% chance that it's already way past the lips.
Right.
And I got tired of just cutting line and hoping that the bullhead's going to be okay. And a lot of people are going to laugh at that statement because they get a bad rap. But I got tired of just losing hooks, and so I started using circle hooks. And my first few times out, I was missing a lot of fish because I was setting the hook.
Mm-hmm.
With a circle hook, you just need to reel.
Yep.
And once I figured that out, I got a lot better outcome with a hook in the side of its mouth than down way past, in its throat.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing with suckers too, is because like a lot of times you feel that bite and they are just nipping at the bait, like it's the opposite effect of the bullhead, where it's like they'll nip at it multiple times before they actually like get it. And so like it's really nice to just be able to like lift that rod, and when I feel tension, then I like definitely like put a bend in the rod, and it's almost like a slow set the way I do it.
Right.
But like you get it tight, and they're hooked on the lip 99% of the time.
Okay.
Like, I think I had 2 this summer that were like deep hooked that ended up going in the sucker ball.
The sucker ball batch.
Yep. Like that's not. Yeah, you're not gonna make it. Sorry.
And then you're a big fan of night crawlers. So you got your number 8 circle hook. Are you just packing one night crawler on there? Is there a certain way without giving out? I mean, is there really any secrets? I think if I was to rig up, when I rig up for suckers, the few times I've gone out, I like to leave a little bit hanging out the back. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Should I ball it up on there so they have to take the whole thing? Most of the time I'm trying to pack one big ass nightcrawler on there. Is that a good idea?
Oh, I think if you're using a whole nightcrawler, you're feeding the fish. Like, I use the tail half first because the heads will survive in your bait container and the tails will not.
Makes sense.
And if you have a dead half nightcrawler in there, it'll poison the rest of them. When you go through as many nightcrawlers as I do, you got to conserve where you can.
Well, dude, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. Your dedication to keeping nightcrawlers alive throughout a Minnesota winter, that and there is a story in itself. But no, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, even as a pan fisherman, if you're using nightcrawlers, I never thought of that. To use the tails first, and as a bullhead fisherman too. Use the tails first. Now, have you ever played around with like using something a little more durable, like a leech, like small or medium leeches, or is it just straight nightcrawler?
I've not tried leeches for suckers. I like leeches when I go to the boundary waters, but I usually will do like just a half a nightcrawler. If the fish are biting really short, I will go to like basically just enough to cover that hook.
Okay.
One thing I always like to point out to people is I'll take a rock out of the river and I'll flip it over and I'll like look at the bugs on there, and they're small, right? Like they're smaller than number 8 hook. They're, same size as trout fishermen use for flies, right? And I'm like, anything that's bigger than this is like a steak dinner, like a, 2-pound porterhouse for like these fish, like you don't need a whole big thing to get their attention. They're used to eating, like midge larvae.
Right. No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I've never thought of it that way. Interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes like, if you're targeting really big fish, I've definitely seen suckers that like were, so big that they were not going to be bothered by a half night crawler. That wasn't going to get their attention. When you're targeting, those, a whole night crawler or a crayfish or something like that, can get their attention as it in the river. But for springtime, river fishing of whatever swims by, half a night crawler at the most.
Okay, all right, that's good. That's good to know. Now, up here, Bemidji area, anyway, we're going to be dealing with a lot of like small perch and various other critters. You know, if you're going to be targeting these suckers, especially if you're, you know, at the mouth of a lake system.
Yeah.
So bring a lot of crawlers with you. I've also thought about, you know, carp style bait balls, but there again, you know, I really don't. There's a lot of room to wiggle and experiment with. Not trying to find the best sucker bait, because at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a night crawler.
Yeah, it's really hard to beat night crawlers for bait.
I always just try to, you know, play around, but I follow a carp fisherman out of Canada, Ryan Ginter. I hope I pronounced his last name right. He makes, in the wintertime, he loves fishing carp up there, and he's always making what do they call the little carp balls? Boilies,
yeah.
Boilies, that's it. And he's doing like some of his recipes. I'm like, man, you should put those in a Ziploc bag. They'd be a good movie snack. They're like, you know, strawberry oatmeal and all this crazy shit. But he's got like a little mold, and it's quite the contraption to make these things. But when I would watch his like Instagram or Facebook when I was on there, I would see him making these things, and I'm like, man, I wonder if those would work for bullheads and suckers too. But I think for the average dude that's going to go out and try this for the first time, just grab a couple dozen crawlers and some number 8 hooks.
No, and I haven't found anything better, you know, and the part of it too, and part of the fun of just fishing that way is like, you don't know what you're going to catch. You know, it's like, I'll fish a creek by my house, and it's like in a day, you know, we might get a moon eye. We might get a couple different types of red horse. We might get white suckers. I've gotten 18-inch smallies, you know, when the water's cold, when I'm fishing for suckers, and I'm like, well, they're, you know, like, okay, I guess I don't mind that. But you know, it's just hard to beat, you know, a worm on the bottom in the right place, you know,
right.
Like that's the key is, you know, it cracks me up too. It's like, cause I'm kind of paying attention to this stuff, and I'll be fishing one spot and people are walking past me downstream, you know, like, like out to the river, but I know that like there's maybe the same fish out there and the same fish in the creek, but in the creek, they're all concentrated. So it's like kind of thinking about where those seasonal movements are and where you have that advantage. Like you're saying, like the channel in between the two lakes, or, you know, what is it going to be that like focuses these fish? Because they're not like bass where they're going to like go swim over and chase your bait. You know, they're only going to eat it if you drop it, you know, on their nose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, finding those concentrations of fish, you know, you get into the action. And, you know, I've never had anyone complain that they were catching too many big fish.
Right. Well, and that's the sole purpose of this little segment, is to introduce some people into fishing in the spring for sucker, to break in that bend in the long rod. And they are formidable fighters as well, and not as easy as one would think to catch. They're pretty rare, wary, I should say.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. They're not not super aggressive, you know, and they don't. They're just going to eat things that are small and, you know, usually holding still, and if they have their minds on, usually they eat pretty well during the spawn. Not all fish. Some fish get more focused on the reproduction. The red horse will and suckers will eat, you know, through the course of the spawn. But it's, you know, it's just a good time, and it's a lot of times it's like a really seasonal thing. It's a real window where these fish will come into especially the smaller, you know, streams where you have a really good chance of getting them, where you can see them and sight fish to them, and that's super fun. You know, and it's like, it might be a couple weeks, and then like they drop back and disappear to some place where they're not as accessible. Like, yeah, get out, you know, grab a forked stick, grab some worms and a lawn chair, you know, bend the rod.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it's nice and simple. No electronics, no crazy gadgetry, even though I love that stuff. It's just very basic, but it can be very, very enjoyable.
Yep. Yeah. And polarized glasses. It's probably the other. But who goes fishing without polarized glasses?
Right. Here's another fringe benefit of the spring sucker fishing. You don't have to douse yourself with bug spray.
Nope.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, and the leaves are just budding out, so it's like it is fairly easy to walk through the woods and get the sunshine going and the water warms up.
Well, and Perfect. It's funny you mentioned the leaves are budding because growing up as a kid, I'd always reference the elderly crowd in my community, and they'd say the suckers run when the buds are as big as a mouse's ear. It's kind of like one of those farmer almanac type situations.
It's true though, because I've been doing maple syrup for the last couple of years, and the end of maple syrup season basically perfectly matches the start of good fishing.
Wow, you've got it really dialed in, man.
My job is literally to drive around and measure rivers, so I do have it dialed in.
Yes, you do. Well, you're the perfect guy for this segment of, spring. I'm ready for spring. You're ready for spring. I think a majority of people here are ready for spring. I know spring is going to be on their brains because, walleye season, by the time this comes out, will be closed here on inland lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when that happens, people are already, come on, thaw out. I wish it would thaw out tomorrow so I could take the boat out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But no, we're still building ice.
I know. It's crazy. I just talked to my brother. He lives in Vista, California, and he's getting close to being retired now. He's in the Marines, and he's, him and his wife is from Minnesota, and they're contemplating moving back here, and he's hesitant, not because, he doesn't want to be closer to family. He lives in a great community, but he's like, every day it's 68 degrees here. And he goes, I haven't lived in a Minnesota winter. I've visited every year, but I haven't lived in a Minnesota winter in 30 years or 25 years. He's like,
if you don't have a Minnesota winter, you don't get spring, and spring is the best time to go fishing.
Right. But at the same time, I also confessed to him, like, if I were you, I wouldn't move because I'm getting tired of these winters, man. It's a lot of work.
Wait, are you talking about the season or are you talking about me now?
I'm talking about the season.
Okay, because sometimes I get confused because people are always like, I hate winter. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like,
No.
I take that personally sometimes.
No, I wish you lived just across town because this show would be completely different. But yeah, so any last tips that you could give somebody that's like, I want to give this a try. I've got the rod, I've got the reel, I've got the line, I've got the hook, got the baits down, and that first trip out's unsuccessful. What would you say to him?
First trips out is unsuccessful. Oof. I would say find some current, find some rocks. If you go out and you are catching sunnies or something like that, you're not in fast enough water.
Okay. That's important.
That's we're talking about rivers and streams here, but if I catch, if I throw out in a spot and I catch, a catfish or something like that, I'm like, no, that's the wrong spot. I need some more speed, where you don't get those catfish or, sunfish and things like that you associate with slower water. You're going to find suckers in those faster current spots.
Without getting too lengthy here, with the high current, are suckers sensitive to the oxygen, like trout? They need so many parts per million of oxygen. Is that the kind of the deal, or at least for their spawn anyway?
It's not that, because I can also say, because this is my job, there isn't rivers are so well mixed that it's not, you don't find a lot of variation in the oxygen from top to bottom or side to side. But what it is just they are just attracted to current. That's their habitat. They're streamlined, and those higher current areas tend to have a lot of invertebrate food on the bottom and stuff. You will find them sometimes, especially during the spawn, when they're migrating upstream, they'll take a break in like an eddy, and like you basically see them like rest and then like head back upstream again. But when they're eating, especially, they're in those slightly faster to very fast current. And so like that's just one thing I think that people a lot of times like we kind of default to what we're used to fishing. I think when I started, trying to target them, I was like look for what I thought were fishy spots, which were like eddies and deep holes. And then you catch catfish and drum and sunfish. And it's just those suckers might be on the other side of that current break.
Yeah. No, I've got it painted out in my head. And that makes a lot of sense.
The other thing I was going to say before I heard the rest of your question was to take your kids,
Perfect.
Like, yeah, you get, especially when you have, if you have 3 rods going instead of 1, or, you get 2 families together and you got, 5, 6, 8 rods spread out, there's always something, going on. And so then, you got one kid, you're yelling at him to get the net, and you're yelling at another kid to get their fishing pole. And, as a dad, you can, chill out and basically just take credit for the biggest fish they catch and, really get the kids into it without making them sit quiet and watch a bobber.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a great tip, actually. Anytime you can get, and like I'm introducing my daughter to fishing, and I've been reflecting on it as spring approaches. Supposedly, kids aren't jaded by appearance.
Mm-mm.
They're just happy to catch something.
Yeah,
they're just and there's something special about that, and I'm not saying that I've lost that, because I do appreciate them all, but I have, I see a lot of people that have lost that, and they're it's damn bullhead. Well, you had fun, but
right.
But taking kids out fishing whenever you can go fishing is always a good thing. So
and they don't have to sit and hold a rod, and or they don't have to cast a lot and get everything tangled up or whatever. You can get fork sticks. I do highly recommend bring your own fork stick, because you don't want to waste time looking for one.
Right.
Some people think that's funny, but I always bring my own fork stick.
No, when I was a kid fishing bullheads, I actually I even made some out of PVC pipe. Because I just got same thing. I got the areas where I'd bullhead fish and forget to bring my fork stick. It didn't take very long, and there were no more fork sticks to be had.
Exactly. There's a metaphor for you. Actually, speaking of fork sticks, have you seen the new fishing regulations yet?
No, I have not. That's going to be on my agenda this weekend.
There's a fork stick on the cover.
Oh, you know what? Somebody might have sent me a picture of the cover of that already. I think it was you.
Did I?
Yeah.
It is my fork stick on the cover, so maybe I did.
Yeah, I think you did. And there is also a sucker on the cover, or a red horse, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a shorthead red horse on the cover.
Shorthead red horse on the cover of the Minnesota fishing regulations, which I'm sure you were super jacked about.
Yeah. I mean, it was my shorthead red horse.
Yeah. Well, of course. Awesome.
But yeah, no, the world's going all tipsy-turvy, man. Like, the Minnesota DNR is celebrating simple fishing and simple fish, Yep.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here.
I got to get back to that reel repair.
Yeah. And thank you for getting spring in our brains, and hopefully some of you guys out there, give this a try. You'd be surprised. It's really fun. And like I said, once you hook up with one, you're going to realize that you're in for a battle. They are a hard fighting fish.
And it's better than watching whatever sports on TV in the spring. I don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to push the limits on the float tube. I'm going to get out as early as I possibly can, which is usually way before opener. So that cold, I don't mind. All right, Tyler, we're going to get out of here. We'll let you go, get that reel fixed up. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll check back in with you soon.
I'll talk to you as soon as I start catching fish.
Perfect,
Take
man.
care.
Bye. All right. Yeah, man. Thank you so much, Tyler. That was awesome. I know I'm super excited to get out there and do a little bit of sucker fishing. Probably going to use some of his tips as far as the braid goes. I found that to be very interesting. And if you find, let's see, what was that called? That he was on YouTube, and he was on DOS Boat, Meat Eater's DOS Boat, and B-side fishing. Look up B-side fishing and you'll find Tyler's video. He makes these really cool sinkers that look to be probably hollowed out paracord with shot in them. They look interesting. And I like that idea of having a slide weight on there. That's pretty good stuff right there. So I'm going to definitely get a rig set up for sucker fishing. I'm going to slide on down to Ridgetop Outdoors for my night crawlers, and I'm going to go looking for some suckers here pretty soon. A little early yet, man. We're just getting at the end of February here. Well, it's March 1st today. So I'm guessing, maybe April-ish. I'm going to start trying to get me some suckers. I would love, and if anybody that's listening to this that lives up on the Rainy River, Lake of the Woods area, please reach out to me and answer this question for me. Can I sucker fish when the walleye season closes up there? Like even from shore? Or would it be really difficult to prove to the Department of Natural Resources or the game warden that I'm actually sucker fishing and not walleye fishing? Because I'm just going to be, doing a little crawler action on the bottom. Now, I'm also aware that I would have to maybe more than likely have to deal with big sturgeon. We're talking a medium to medium light action rod. But man, I've caught some big ones up there on sturgeon gear, and I can only imagine what they'd be like on spinning gear, like medium light stuff, 10-pound braid. I think that'd be freaking awesome. So if anybody that's up there that's listening to this, please reach out to me via Instagram or the Lone Angler email. It's the Lone Angler Podcast at gmail.com. The Lone Angler on Instagram, Minnesota Chomp on Instagram. It's actually MN_Chomp on Instagram, or just search my name. And or TikTok. Find me on TikTok. I've been doing a lot of TikToking lately. That's fun. Well, that's fun. That's a whole different show, though. But yeah, so here it is, man. Spring ahead. Let's focus on open water and flow tube fishing and just getting your feet wet. Not having to start the car a half an hour to an hour early every morning because it's beastly cold. I think we've survived it. Positive attitudes ahead. Everybody have a kick-ass Tuesday, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.